Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Kumo. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of the historical sites throughout the communities of Massachusetts. This year, the communities he has chosen to focus on are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. Today's episode will be discussing the Calvary Cemetery, located in Hatfield, Mass. So tell us about the basic layout of the cemetery.
It's a cozy little cemetery that I like a lot because of the way it's made. We're going to talk about the cemetery today in terms of the Zebra Pre-Circle, Potter's Field, a baby section. We're also going to talk about the church that's associated with his Catholic cemetery. And we're going to tell you about some of the more important or interesting burials we're going to find within here. And remember that I always have a webpage for every cemetery or church, so you'll find this cemetery under the Hatfield section. Now, the cemetery itself, you're going to find it officially on Bridge Street in Hatfield. But it's 100 yards from School Street and 200 yards from Prospect Street. And it is such that when you go in, it's laid out like a lawn-style cemetery. And there's a big wrought iron fence in the front of it, and a sign, the Calvary Cemetery. And there's two roadways going inwards, and there's a nice little outdoor chapel, and somewhat towards the middle back. And there you can say final prayers. It has inside of it a board that explains the reason why it's there, but there's a crucifix inside with a little altar, and you can go there and say prayers to the deceased one, either the day of the burial or come back years hence and say more prayers. So it's a gorgeous little cemetery, and also very important. Now, in this cemetery are all three major ethnic groups that settled western Massachusetts and the Great Migration when the Industrial Revolution was happening in the United States in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And you're going to find Polish, Irish, and French Canadians in this cemetery. Now, there is a little pre-circle area, but it's only maybe like 3 or 4 priests inside of it. And I'm going to talk about them a bit later. So the best place to start, I would say, is right towards that outdoor chapel in the back.
And is there a baby section within the cemetery?
Yes, towards the middle, towards the right, about halfway towards the back, there's a section that babies are buried in. Some of the babies would have been non-baptized babies. Some of the babies would have been baptized, and also a few indigenous paupers are buried there. And I think they moved the gravestones in that section around a little bit to make it look uniform. But a tiny bit of that section would have been non-baptized babies. If this cemetery started about 1900, then there's only a few decades before you start to have a lot of cremations, and babies would have been cremated by about 1930. So there's only a few non-baptized. And then since a lot of parents couldn't afford a full plot for the child, even was baptized, some of the babies are there, usually with stones. And then there's some paupers, and the stones have been moved there. So the babies and the paupers look like they're in the exact same area. But I think the adults are towards the front and the babies are toward the back in reality.
And really quick, before I continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops on each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for any inquiries or for private tours, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So, what church is this cemetery linked with?
With the St. Joseph Church of Hatfield, a Catholic church. And that church itself is found in the, probably called the main section of Hatfield. The church is at 15 School Street. And I think the cemetery and the church are from the same year, 1900. And you could still say it belongs to St. Joseph's Church, but now that church has redefined what parish it is, and it's combined with the other church, Catholic Church. So, the Polish that settled in Hatfield were so numerous that when you go through the cemetery, it seems like it's a cemetery for the Polish people, but there are Irish and French Canadians around. Now, nowadays it's associated with Our Lady of Grace Parish. Okay, and it's under their domain, and the other Catholic cemetery, the Holy Trinity Cemetery, is also under their domain. And that was a Polish cemetery. Now, one of the first priests was Reverend Father Andrew Bozik, and he's buried here with the largest gravestone. He's in actually right in front of the chapel section, so towards the middle of the cemetery. And on he is on the cross. He has a cross monument, and it has 1936 on it. So that's probably the date he died. Okay, and there's other cool stones around. Try to find the one that are next to it, because I believe there's 4 priests in a row. And then just wander around enjoying the sights. Okay, I just looked up that priest died in 1941. So he was one of the first priests associated with this church. Okay.
And tell us of the burials.
Okay, the burials are really cool around here. This cemetery is a modern cemetery, so there's no arrangement in direction. It's towards the road. And you're going to see a lot of modern stones. A lot of older ones are marble, are very white. And the modern stones tend to be in back, so you can tell that there's a different age of the cemetery, because the property they owned probably ended right at the chapel, and then they bought a section later on, and the modern stones are back there. Right, and so you enjoy yourself when you walk around this cemetery and try to learn where things are. Thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And be sure to check out videos and podcasts posted daily. And you can find a large selection of other podcasts on this